Welcome to the Dash Mindset Podcast. I'm Sherry Zievenbergen. You were born, you're gonna die, and your adventure is your dash in between. So make the most of it. Unlock your potential in all aspects of your dash by embracing your uniqueness and living in a way that's authentic to you, not by doing more things, but by focusing on the right things. I'm a former corporate leader turned coach who's on my own journey, and I'm passionate about helping you on your journey too. So on the podcast, we'll explore how to live authentically by deciphering who you truly are and what you truly want. Are you ready to take a step toward designing your dash? Someday doesn't actually exist, so let's do it now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dash Mindset Podcast. I'm excited for my guest today, Jones Loflin, and I'm going to have Jones tell a lot about himself. But to start out with, Jones is in North Carolina. Super hot there, even hotter than in Iowa right now. He is a keynote speaker, coach, and an author of several books. So I'm going to ask him lots of questions about his books. His most recent one is called Focused as a Bee. And because you can't see him, I just need you to know he's wearing yellow and black. He's dressed up for the occasion. So Absolutely. I just need you to know that. All right, Jones, I am so excited to have you here. So Jones, I will just let you start and tell us about yourself, what you do. Tell us a little bit about your journey, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Absolutely, Sherry. Thank you for that. Thrilled to be on the Dash Mindset Podcast today and to talk with your listeners and share some thoughts and ideas. Yeah, I'm a professional speaker and author. I've been doing that starting my 31st year. When I started this, I had a full head of hair. You can't see that on the audio either. I don't now.
And you were 12. You were 12,
That's right.
Jones?
Thank you. Appreciate that. And so my work has been primarily around time management, work-life balance or success or integration, whatever we're calling it this week, and also leadership. And so I like to teach from metaphors or parables or analogies, as your listeners will find out today. I got started with that in around 2000. Somebody handed me a copy of the book, Who Moved My Cheese? Now, for your listeners, 35 and under, you're going, what? Yes, there was a book called Who Moved My Cheese, which helped people understand how they could look at change with a different perspective and hopefully move forward. Love the book. I actually worked for the company for a while as their senior trainer because I saw the power of metaphor, helping people figure out where they are and how they can move forward. And so that led me to write other books in a similar genre or similar way. So that's what I do, a keynote speaker and author. That's not who I am. What I am is a husband who's been married to a wonderful woman for over 35 years. My favorite word is flummoxed. There you go, flummoxed.
Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. That's when you don't know, when you just don't know what to say about something, or you don't know how to say. I'm just flummoxed. So love to say that word. It's a fun one.
And even use of the word makes one flummoxed.
I love that. Absolutely.
Okay, let me continue.
Yeah, no. And so I have two daughters, one really cool son-in-law. We'll have a second really cool son-in-law coming in March of next year because my younger daughter is engaged. And other than that, if you want to, when I'm having a good time, when I'm having a lively conversation like we are today, over a cup of really good coffee. So there you go.
Fantastic. I'm so excited to have you here today, Jones. Okay, so over 30 years. So so you worked at the company who published the book, Who Moved My Cheese, or wrote the book.
Right. I did some other things before, and actually I was a part-time contract trainer for Who Moved My Cheese. So I started my own business of speaking and training in 94, and it was primarily around youth education because I'm a former classroom teacher. And so, yeah.
Okay, so what was it about You Moved My Cheese in particular that made you think, I want to focus particularly on this? Was it the use of metaphors? Was it that you saw, maybe coming from the classroom, did you see, wait a minute, adults need help too?
No, I already knew that from my own experience.
And how did you go from the classroom to training?
Sure, absolutely. Let's take the last part first. From classroom to training, I'd been teaching for 5 years and knew that I just wanted to try something different. I enjoyed the classroom. My wife and I are both teachers, and we said, Is this what we want our careers to look like? And while I was young and she was too, and she had a steady job, I said, this was time for me to kind of test the waters. And so that led me to looking into speaking and training. The appeal of Who Moved My Cheese was more about the fact that I read a book in an hour that didn't preach to me. It wasn't condescending. I was invited into a story. So I'm tracking mentally and emotionally, wanting to, how's it going to turn out for Hall? How's it going to turn out for this character? And so I knew I was invested into the story. And when it was done, I knew what I needed to do as far as taking a next step. It didn't try to give me all the answers. It just gave me the confidence and the clarity to take that next step. So that was the appeal. And as I said before, it's what's led me to teach and train and speak in similar ways since then.
That's a really good point, because there's no preachiness to the book. It's just a story about mice trying to find cheese and the different approaches they take.
Sure.
That's a really good point. And it is super short. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your books. So I love the names of all of them, but Juggling Elephants. I can't decide if I like that one more, or Focused as a Bee. I can't decide which one. And I like on the cover of your book, it says Busy as a Bee, right? And then that's crossed out. Says Focused. I love that. So tell us about your most recent book first, because it's fascinating to me. It started when you and your daughter were raising bees, right? And you just noticed how the bees operated, and that's what got your brain around that, right?
Absolutely. My daughter and I started beekeeping in 2019, so it's been about 6 years, and we still have bees. I think we currently have about 10 active hives, and I manage a few for a friend of mine. So we enjoy it, just dad and daughter at first. I mean, who doesn't enjoy doing something unique like that with their son or daughter? And then as we began working with the bees more, we noticed that they were doing things that really helped them get stuff done, if you will, whether it's building out the comb or getting honey and all those types of things. And so we started going, how would that look in our own life if we were to practice some of those principles that we see bees doing? Of course, I'm kind of already thinking that way because my background with Who Moved My Cheese and my other books, Juggling Elephants and Always Growing. So I kind of sensed there were some ideas there. And so we, like any good author should do with a self-help book or a book like this, we started living out the principles a little bit. We started practicing this idea of one job and thinking about, what does it mean to give myself permission to recharge? Because bees recharge. They're not working all the time. And so that's how the book began to take shape. Now the title, Focused as a Bee, comes from the idea that what do we normally say, Sherry? When we talk about bees, we don't say focused as a bee, we say
busy.
There you go. We say busy.
I'm using that tone because we hear that word so much, which I suspect is what led you to naming it that, right? Or it was because that out on the cover. Yeah.
Yeah, because what happens is, how was your day? Oh, I was so busy. Yeah, and then I don't say this to people, but I say, but were you focused? Or what did you move forward? Because busy implies activity, but it doesn't necessarily mean we've made progress to accomplish anything. And we know the old saying that you check off something on a list, the endorphins go off in your head. That doesn't mean it was the right thing to check off. And so what we wanted to say with the cover and the book is it's not about activity. It's about the intentional direction of your time and energy toward what matters most. Those three parts are important: intentional, time and energy, and what matters most. And if you're fulfilling those three, then you really are focused and probably moving forward, accomplishing your goals, living the life that you most want to live.
So can you talk a little bit more about energy? Because as a society, most of us are chronically stressed and we're surrounded by other people who are chronically stressed. So we consider it normal a lot of the time. We think, okay, well, I mean, this is the way I was throughout a lot of my career. I'm functioning. I can get up and I can function and I might drink several cups of coffee throughout the day, but I'm getting through, right? And sometimes we consider that enough when it really isn't. We're not really considering our energy level throughout the day. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Let me take a step back and kind of bring it into the bee world for a moment. And that is that that honeybees, one of the things that amazed me about them is that every action they take is aligned with an outcome they want, or the overall outcome they want of a thriving hive, a healthy hive. Every action they take. I mean, Sherry, if Sydney or I are working with bees and we're watching them do different things, we've gotten to the point now where we can say, okay, I know why that bee is doing that, because it's going to lead to this, it's going to lead to this, it's going to lead to, the healthy hive type thing. I think, unfortunately, for us as humans today, especially in Western culture, we don't stop and think about, is the activity I'm currently engaging in going to give me the outcome I want? Or is it contributing to the outcome I want? We don't even stop and say, what do I want from today? We just grab the first crisis and go. And so when you talk about energy, we're constantly engaging in activities that are draining our energy, instead of saying, okay, this is draining me. What is something I could, bring into my schedule or do during the day that would actually improve my physical, mental, or emotional energy, so that I could be my best at that next task, that next meeting, or that next conversation? We just aren't intentional about managing our energy, which is part of focus, as well as our time. Fun fact about bees, I'll take it back to them again. In an average beehive, in a healthy beehive, a bee takes an average of 40 naps per day. Okay.
What?
Yeah. Now, you're thinking, wait a minute, Jones, there's only 24 hours a day. It's a millisecond. I mean, sometimes it's just for just a few seconds that bee will stop. And the reason it does that, it's intuitive for them, but the reason it does that is because it knows it needs to recharge or be ready for the next moment when it's going to be, called upon to do something. Foraging bees, the bees that work the hardest, the ones we most naturally think of, they're going out, collecting the pollen and the nectar, they've been known to take up to 50 naps per day. The harder they're working, the more important it is for them to stop, recharge their energy, and then go about the next task.
That is amazing.
Isn't it though?
Okay. I'm so excited to read your book, by the way. And so I know that I'm asking you questions that are laid out so nicely in your book.
No, go ahead.
But, I suspect that there are at least a few people who haven't heard your book either, who are listening right now. So you talk about a little bit about permission. I'm nearly certain you talk about that in your book, right? Mm-hmm. Permission and the guilt we have sometimes certainly if we took 50 naps a day, there might be some level of guilt. But even if we were to take a lunch some days, we feel some level of guilt, right? And we are often looking for permission from someone other than ourselves, right?
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about permission?
Sure, absolutely. The overarching idea in the book is that we have to give ourselves permission to focus, because so often we give ourselves permission to be distracted. Meaning that we aren't intentional about saying, where do I want my time and energy to go? So it's easy just to get distracted by that bright, shiny object, or by that phone that's close by, or the person who says, hey, have you got a minute? We just aren't intentional about what does it mean to focus. So that's the big one, the permission to focus. Now, under that, in the book, we talk about 6 permissions that we have to give ourselves. And some of us are really good at some and not so much at others. But the first one's permission to prioritize. We have to say to ourselves, this task is more important than this one, or this activity or this conversation is more important. We have to give ourselves permission to prioritize so that we can choose where we should be spending our time and energy. If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. We can't see every activity on our list or in our calendar as having the same weight and getting us towards what's most important to us. Another one that we talk about in the book is permission to plan. It is amazing to me how many people, as I said earlier, start their day with the first crisis, the first text message, the first social media message that they need to respond to. Instead of stopping and saying, what is the outcome I want from today? What do I want to accomplish today? What are those tasks and activities that would get me to the outcome I want? And so that's permission to plan. One that's really unique, and I'll stop with this next permission for now, but it's permission to be unavailable. It's probably the one that we've got the most feedback on about the book as people go, wait a minute, that's different. Yeah, the idea of being unavailable is so that you can be focused in the moment. We've got to be unavailable to the noise in our head. We've got to be unavailable to the external environment around us. And we've got to be unavailable to the expectations of others if we're going to focus in the moment and work on what's most important. So that's 3 of the 6 that are in the book.
Oh, I love that. It's so often thought that giving ourselves alone time and that permission that without distraction, what did you call it again?
Permission to be unavailable.
Yes, thank you. Permission to be unavailable. That feels selfish in a lot of cases, but it's one of the least selfish things you can do.
Yes.
I have learned
Wait, Sherry. I'm clapping. That if those of you listening did not write that down. Taking time for yourself is one of the most unselfish things you can do. Yes, continue. I'm sorry.
Yes, and there have been times when first of all, I have learned just to take a deep breath if I'm frustrated.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll just take a deep breath throughout the day because we forget to breathe, right?
Yeah, especially when you're stressed. Our breathing gets shallow. I notice myself sometimes when I start looking at my calendar or something, I'll start, wait a minute, Jones, you need to breathe and need to breathe deep. And it's amazing how just doing that for a few seconds and you go, okay, I feel better now. I can address whatever's in front of me. I just had to mention that because you're exactly right.
Well, and those simple things sometimes we don't think about. But my boys have gotten, they're old enough now that sometimes I'll just take a deep breath just for the sake of it. And they'll say, what's wrong?
Yeah, that happens too.
That they're doing something that's stressing me out, right? But I have realized that sometimes I do just have to say, when you have that self-awareness, you can say, hey, I just need a minute and step out. And that is truly in the best interest of everyone in your environment, right? It's certainly not selfish at those points for me to excuse myself and give myself some time.
I will never forget, Sherry, I was talking with a mom of multiple kids, career, just so many things going on in her life. And she goes, I just don't have time for me. I can't take time for me because there are people depending on me, both at work and at home. And I asked her the question, I said, what would be the value of you taking 10 minutes for yourself when you first got home before you started, being mom and without skipping a beat? She goes, I'd be more patient with my children. I'd be more present with them. And I said, do you think it might be worth the 10 minutes? And she's like, yeah. She just needed somebody to remind her that of the value of doing that so that you can be your best in the next moment, which is the whole idea of focus in the first place.
Right. We're just so close to ourselves and it's funny too, how so many of us have this thought that, so many people are depending upon me, that we're not giving people, we don't think they have agency over themselves. I mean, certainly if you have toddlers, right?
Sure.
But most people can function without somebody else there for 10 minutes, maybe even an hour, right? But we have this thought that, everyone is depending upon me. And it's this blanket statement without really thinking through, are they really though? So I love that. That is fantastic. So is this something you've worked with a lot of clients on, is that permission, working through that guilt? Moms in particular, I suspect. Little ones especially.
Absolutely. And yes, the answer is yes. In my coaching that I do with clients and also just in one-on-one conversations, whether it's at a presentation or a keynote or just, in good conversation like we're having today, it is a common theme because one of the questions I'll ask people sometimes when they're stressed or they're overloaded, I'll say, in your drive to get it all done, what's not getting done or not getting done well? And it's interesting how they'll start listing things. And I'll say, okay, what would it take or how many minutes do you need to be able to engage in those things that would help you be more happy, fulfilled, excited about life, those things? They can normally tell me and I'll say, okay, let's go find that. Let's go look for it. So then we start looking at their day. Where are they spending their time and what could they do differently to begin to engage in those activities? And again, Sherry, what constantly blows me away is that the answers are always so most of the time are so simple. But you said it a moment ago, we're so close to ourselves. Nobody has challenged us, which is what I love about coaching. Nobody's challenged us to stop, number one, and then to think a little differently and go, oh, something else is possible. And then as a coach, to hold them accountable through follow-up sessions and other interactions.
Right, absolutely. And, it's funny too, just going back to the breathing, because clearly we all know how to breathe, or, we know how to breathe to the extent that we are surviving. But I was in my, probably my 30s, and I went to physical therapy for something, headaches, and my physical therapist told me that I wasn't breathing right. Like, what are you talking about? But I mean, that's one of those simple things. We can all breathe. So we think, oh, that's fine. But we don't actually take deep breaths. We don't really recognize that when we're in a state of overwhelm or busyness, just going, that, you know what, we are shallow breathing, and it would really benefit us to do something. Okay. So Jones, because you've been doing this since you were 12, what have you noticed when it comes to the level of distraction throughout those 30 years?
Wow.
Because there are times now that it's like, okay, there's WhatsApp, there's Facebook Messenger, there's so many other things. And just the other day, I left my phone at home and I was going to my workout class. I don't use my phone at my workout class, but there was this part of me that thought, oh, what if I get a message, right? And then to think about the 72 other means of communication we have. So what have you seen throughout your 30 years?
Oh, sure. Well, there's no question it's increased. I mean, in 1994, we had phones and fax machines, and the phones were tethered. Well, no, excuse me, we had cordless phones, but that was it.
Were they the bagged phones? No, we had small phones by then, right?
Well, no. In fact, my first phone was a bag phone, and so I had one of those. I think I was around 96 or something like that. But they've exponentially increased, and the other side of that, when we talk about electronic distractions, is just the expectation from others that we're always going to be available, and not one of the things that I teach about, especially even in the workplaces, is training people, how to reach you, how to contact you when you're going to be unavailable, and how the best way is to reach out to them. We just don't do that. We're not intentional. And so that's why we get distracted, because we haven't set guidelines. We haven't set boundaries. We haven't taught people that, hey, the first 30 minutes when I come in the morning, I'm not going to be responding to email, or I'm not going to be responding to Teams messages, because I want to be able to work on some longer term things, or this project, or something. We just don't take those steps to do that, which is especially dangerous if you're in a leadership role. Because what are you teaching your people if you're not willing to pull aside and do some of that deeper work and some time blocking? Then they don't see the need to either in that way. So the distractions are just exponential. I think there's always a way that we can take a step forward to reduce those in some way. It's just being willing to look at what could I do differently.
Right. Well, and especially in a leadership role, it's not as if the people who are reporting to you are going to say, hey, I've noticed you respond to emails at 6 a.m. Is your expectation that I do that too? Nobody's going to ask that question. You simply model the behavior. And
yes.
It's fascinating to me how we put this expectation on ourselves a lot of the time that, I need to get back to somebody immediately. But no one has actually said that to us. So, a lot of my career, I said yes to a lot of things. And I realized somewhere along the way, a good leader stepped in at some point and said, do you want to be known as that person that says yes to everything? Because then people have that expectation of you, right? So if you're answering your phone at 6 a.m, and I've never been one of those people. Just
good for you.
But I worked with so many people who would say, my boss IM'd me at 6 a.m. Well, just don't respond, right? But then that person puts that expectation on themselves, and then they keep responding. So then the boss is going to keep IMing them. And anyway. I'm getting on the soapbox here, but it's so important, because I think it's really critical for your listeners to listen to what you're saying, Sherry, and going, am I that person? Am I that yes person who is so available to other people, I'm not available to my own deeper thoughts and reflections and plans and goals and priorities? And
I talked to someone years ago, this was in the early days of email, and they said, if I don't respond to someone's email in 5 minutes, I feel like I've let them down. I'm like, how do you get anything done during the day? Yeah. And she goes, well, hopefully people don't email me as much. And it blew me away. But it goes back to what you said. It was just, they created that expectation for themselves and projected that onto other people. And those other people will say, no, I'd be fine if you didn't respond for an hour or 2 hours, depending on what it was, in that way.
Well, it was funny too. Sometimes, have you ever sent an email and then somebody replies right away and you thought, oh, crud. I was just trying to get it off my plate onto your plate. You could have left it there longer, right?
Yeah.
So it's just this constant, you could spend all day just emailing back and forth with the same person. It's maddening. Yeah. Okay, I want to talk to you a little bit about vacation, because something I've noticed. So, I mean, each of us we value very different things, right? A value to me has always been vacation time. And I have just never worked on vacation. Maybe I'll say, hey, check in with me if you need to. But I am well aware that, the company I was at was not going to go under because I was on vacation.
Well, Sherry, I don't know, Sherry. You're a pretty important person and you're pretty smart. So
they're still going. So oddly. And I haven't even been at the company for a while, even beyond vacation. But a lot of times people would say to me, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could go on a 2-week vacation. And it's funny how we think we're a much bigger deal than we actually are a lot of the time, right?
Write that down again, listeners. Another great point by Sherry Z.
So I have friends who do consulting and training. They have Slingshot 25 is the name of the business. And they have a big printout or they have it framed in their office that says, you're just not that big of a deal. Oh. And I love that, because it's not to say, oh, you aren't worth something, you're not valuable. But we do think that like the earth will just shatter or our company will just shatter if we step away, and that other people can, but we can't because we're that big of a deal. Yeah. Okay. So now I'll let you talk about that.
Well, I mean, amen to everything you said, Sherry. That time away, in fact, I was reading a post about this on LinkedIn this morning. Somebody was talking about, even for entrepreneurs, how critical it is, to step away so that your mind is focusing on the bigger picture, is that it is that opportunity to recharge. It's the physical, it's the emotional, it's the mental energy that you can renew on a vacation and be able to come back and be even more effective. I think the key there again is, what's the outcome you want from your vacation? If you ask people that, say, well, I want to rest. Okay, what does that look like? And getting them to set the expectation for themselves of what they want it to look like. I love it when somebody says, you know what? I check my email while I'm on vacation. I know I need to kind of stay in touch with the office. So I'm going to check my email the first 30 minutes of the morning. Everybody knows I'm on vacation, and I say, well, what would constitute you responding to an email? And if they've got clarity on that, I'm like, you go. Because that's going to give them the freedom then that when they go into their email and they don't see anything here that's a dumpster fire, then they can go do their thing the rest of the day and be fully present with their loved ones, their friends, whoever they're on vacation with, and really embrace that moment and get themselves recharged so that they'll be better when they come back to work.
Yeah. I love that. And really defining, okay, what qualifies as important? Because otherwise 3 hours later, you're still responding to emails. Yeah. Because everybody thinks their email to you that they want a response to is important, right?
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I'd love for you to just share some tips. Just what are, maybe 3 tips that you would share with people who have all of these excuses we've talked about? And they're valid. I mean, they are valid. Sure, it's not like people are making them up, right? I mean, but what are your tips when we find ourselves thinking we're maybe a bigger deal than we think? We are looking for permission from someone else, whatever it is.
I think it starts, and I know people who are listening are going, Jones has said the same thing at least 8 times today. I think it does start with your own goals and what you want. You have to stop and say, what do I want my work life to look like? One of my other books, Juggling Elephants, is about managing your work and life like it's a circus. And we believe you have 3 rings. You've got a work ring, you got a self ring, and you got a relationships ring. And so I think stopping to assess how things are going in each one of those 3 rings is critical. Because once you do, you can begin to see, yeah, I could really do some work in the relationship string. Okay, what does that look like? How does that build into your schedule? What do you want to do to improve, your self ring or that area of your life? I think it really starts with you stopping and deciding what you want. The second thing to do, I think, I'm a big believer in you got to put numbers behind things. And so I will sometimes ask people in a coaching session, I'll say, what's a number that bothers you right now? And they look at me kind of, I say, no, what's a number that bothers you related to your productivity, your time management, your relationships? And I love that exercise because people will say, the number of times I check my phone each day. Okay. All right. Well, think about what that number is. How could you cut it in half, or how could you reduce it by 10%? Somebody else might say, number of times I hang out with my friends. Okay. What number would you like for it to be? And once they give me that number, sometimes somebody might not be hanging out with their friends at all and say, I want to do it 7 times a month. I'm like, probably not going to happen. It's too big of a jump. What would it look like if you were hanging out with your friends twice a month? In some lesser than their big goal, but at least they're doing something. They're making progress. I think that's the second suggestion that I have. And the third one is talk to someone who you believe kind of is 2 or 3 steps in front of you. Not somebody who seems to have it all together. By the way, they don't. But if somebody seems to be really good at focusing how they use their time and being unavailable, talk to them about what they do. How do they do that so that you can be motivated to do it yourself? As you said earlier, Sherry, so often we surround ourselves with people who are crazy busy just like we are. And when we say, yeah, I'm just so stressed out. And that other person goes, oh, I am too. And you go, oh, well, I'm okay then. Instead
just making sure.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of seeking out that person who you go, wait a minute, I don't see you walking like your tail's on fire every time, you walk down the hall or when we're on a Zoom call. You just seem so present. Talk to me about that and learn from them. And so those are, 3 suggestions I would have for people who just feel like they're, just all over the place.
Oh, I love that. I will say there was, a point in my career. I mean, we get so comfortable and accustomed to being busy all the time too, that actually after I hired my first coach is when, I realized how big of a deal I wasn't. But I realized, okay, I can actually, start working out and leave the office, on time and whatever on time is. But I remember it being super uncomfortable for a while. Because I was so comfortable just going that it can be really uncomfortable for people. And I think that's a lot of the reason too, why distraction gives us this feeling of, maybe productivity or it's comfortable in some ways. As uncomfortable as it is, it's also comfortable, which I think is the case with a lot of things in life. But do you find that with a lot of the clients that you work with?
Yeah. Oh, no question. Because it's so counterculture. We just get so caught up. A personal example for a moment. I have really tried to be intentional this summer about slowing down, even walking, when I'm not walking for a cardio, of course, but just kind of my pace from one place to another. And Lisa, my wife and I were coming out of the grocery store the other day, and my wife she's my lifelong project in all of these things, just so everyone listening knows. I don't preach, I don't push, but I just watch her sometimes. I'm like, oh, you're making it so hard on yourself. And she says the same thing about me and the way I do some things, I'm sure. But we were coming out of the grocery store, and remember, my goal is not to be rushed and not to really. So she was halfway to the car, and I had barely gotten out of the store because she's like, argh! And she looks back at me, and I'm like, I am not rushing. We have no reason to. We have nowhere to be in a hurry. I am not rushing because I'm just going. And she just looked at me like I had 3 heads. But that, I think that's the point, is that it is uncomfortable because everybody else is at a different pace.
Yeah.
But do you want what everybody else has too? Do you want their stress level? Wouldn't you rather have the outcomes you want? Wouldn't you rather be able to finish the day and go, I got the things done that were important, and I don't feel as stressed as I normally do? That goes back to the idea you mentioned one of my book, that book, Juggling Elephants. The idea of juggling elephants is that we think we can get it all done. And when we do that, we're juggling elephants, which is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And things fall, we get hurt, it's painful. And when we stop and say, I can't get it all done, and that's okay, because I can get the most important things done today. And you know what? Those other things, they will be there tomorrow. I had a little lady, I was speaking to a hospital auxiliary group several years ago, just a precious moment in my career. I'll always remember it. I had spoken on Juggling Elephants, and she came up to me after it was over. And there was a kind of an elderly group. And so I was kind of talking about, hey, do you really have elephants? And they were telling me about end of life, prescriptions, Social Security, all those concerns they have. And this sweet little lady, probably 4'11", if that, came walking up to me, shuffling up to me, and she's kind of shaking her finger a little bit because she's, got the shakes. And she's like, Jones, you'll always have elephants. They just change. And I'm like, thank you, I'm depressed. But she's right. We're always going to have more to do than we can get done. So why not get the most important things done? Why not do the things that bring joy to us, along with the things that we have to do? Why not choose to do those things that bring joy to us so that we have the physical, mental, and emotional energy to return tomorrow with that same level of excitement about what's possible?
Yeah. I love. It's so funny too how I can envision this little old lady.
Oh yeah, we all have that person in our life. Yes.
It is funny how we think that if we, if I could just have enough time, I'd get everything off my list. Because even, I keep a Target list on my phone. Mm-hmm. And I just left Target the other day and I thought, I forgot to get such and such. I mean, it's never ending, whether it's going to Target, anything, right? Okay. Well, and I love your story too, Jones, about you and your wife, because you've written these books, right? You live together, and it's still a challenge sometimes for her to understand, why are you not moving faster? You
Sure.
say, why don't you slow down, right? Because we're so close to that person too. Right. You can't even tell your spouse necessarily, right? I know my husband tells me to try to slow down. Oh my goodness. So is that the case? Is that the case with your girls too? Or how about just your friend group? Do you find that the people closest to you, in addition to your wife, just aren't maybe listening to your message as well as you'd like?
Well, first of all, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got when I was thinking about coaching was you don't coach friends and family.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm sure you got that as well.
Yeah.
In that, so I don't say things, related to if people want to talk to me about it, I do. What I try to do, Sherry, is model it and model the value of it. Mm-hmm. And and hopefully people see that and they go, oh, okay, I could do more of that. And if they ask me about it, sure, I'm gonna say, well, here's why I do that. Here's the value in doing that. So mm-hmm. I find that my friends, my family, they're all across the board. I've got some that I learned so much about time management and communication or leadership from. Then I've got some family members who I would just like to, and friends who I just like to put my arm around and say, I could really help you reduce some of your stress. But, I'm not invited in, and that's okay.
Right. Exactly.
I have to live my life in such a way that if people see value in the way I'm doing things or the consequences of that, then they will say, you're doing things a little different, Jones. What's driving that? What's behind that? Mm-hmm. And so then that gives that opportunity to have a conversation.
Yeah. And do you sometimes just give your books for Christmas presents to everyone you know? I'm just kidding.
Thank you, because no. In fact, it's funny. I'll have people say to me, people who know me and may not know that a book has even come out. Because we do the promotion on the business side, but I don't go to my friends and say, hey, I need you to buy my book and I need you to do this and those kind of things. And they'll say, you've written another book. I'm like, yeah, you didn't tell me. I, didn't see the need to. Well, I'd want to buy one. I'm not going to buy one. Here's one that got damaged in shipment. Here's a free one, kind of thing.
I'll even sign it for you.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a whole nother level of awkwardness. But yeah, it is amazing how, we all have something to learn from each other. And you asked a moment ago about my network, my people around me and those things. One of the things that I do, Sherry, is I intentionally have people in my life who do live life differently than I do. I mean, ones that I kind of look up to and say, wow. Mm-hmm. And I have a phone call with them once a month. I have scheduled. Different ones. I've got one who's so good at time management, and so he and I talk once a month. I got another one who's a couple years ahead of me in age, and I'm kind of watching what's going on, with his life and things. And I love having conversation. I got another one who's a creative. So I think it's really important for all of us is that if we want to improve, if we want to get better at some aspect of life, go find somebody, and they'll be honored that you ask. The people that I talked to when I first reached out to them and said, "Hey, could we have a conversation about with me?" I'm like, "Yeah, because you've got something you can teach me, and I want to learn."
Right.
And so we have a great conversation.
Okay, so I have a couple more questions for you. For one,
absolutely,
what would you say to the person? And I think it's probably a lot of the things you've said already, but to the person who is just so inundated with all their busyness that they don't even know that there's something they should do or they could do. I know that one of my challenges throughout my life was I just thought I was programmed that way, and that's the way it was. It's just, well, this is it, right? This is what I got. I'm an adult now. This is how it works. So what would you say to those people? Because a lot of the people don't even know that they need to do something, right?
Sure.
Or maybe what would you say that we should say to someone who's in that position who doesn't know it and is kind of fighting against it?
Well, you said something interesting there. You said they don't know it, but they're fighting against it. So I think it's a little different. So I would approach it a little differently. For the person who doesn't know it, and I'm concerned about them,
or doesn't know it's a problem. Maybe that's what I should say. Yeah.
I think for them, I would say to them kind of some form of the question I asked earlier. And, noticing you're trying to get everything done, what do you notice is not getting done? I mean, just simply ask. And because when I ask that, Sherry, whether it be in a keynote or whether it be in a coaching session, people will immediately start saying, I'm not getting strategic stuff at work, or I'm not spending the time with my kids that I want, or I have no time for myself. And so I think from that point, then it becomes a very a linear conversation. Okay, well, let's address that. Let's talk about that. What would that give you? First of all, I think you have to help them find a motivation. And say, if the person who says to me, I'm not getting to the strategic stuff at work, when they say that, I'll say, okay, how would it be helpful if you got to that? My team wouldn't be waiting on me all the time. Yeah. How would that make you feel? Oh, I'd feel so, you see what it's coaching stuff, 101.
Right.
Is I think you got to give them that opportunity to look for it, and then to give them some hope that there's, things can be different. Like you said earlier, for the person who's fighting against it, that's more difficult. I think you can try to show them the consequence. If you continue doing these things, what do you think the outcome's going to be in 6 months or 1 year? And you can kind of help paint that picture for them. But I have often found, at least for me, they got to kind of be ready. They kind of got to hit a wall. Now, when they hit the wall, you don't say, I told you so. You just say, I'm here. I'm here, and how can I be of help? Not, if you need help, let me know. I hate that. I hate it when people say that to me because that's like, oh, I'm so weak and frail, and I'm about to, fall from this life. I will call you and say, please save me. But if somebody says, how can I help? Then they're walking with me, and I think in those moments when that person who's fighting it and they begin to realize, I need some, how can I help with that? Leave me alone. Okay. Don't say anything for a week. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think that, leave me alone is actually a really, I think that could be a response that we need to expect, right?
Exactly. We want to maintain the relationship. And if that person feels like every time that they see us, we're going to call to mind some deficiency or challenge, they're not going to want to hang around us. But if we're that kind of person who's supportive, now, if I see somebody getting ready to jump off a cliff, proverbially, I'm going to say something. I'm not going to let them do that. But if I'm there and I'm present with them, and then I know in that moment when they go, okay, Jones, I've had it. Help me. Okay, let's see what we can do. I think it's just a much healthier way to approach it.
And I love what you said about, those particular questions, asking those questions, because you don't have to be a coach to ask those questions.
No.
I mean, you can ask that of your spouse, of your relative, of your friends without, you're not offering advice. You're simply just asking questions.
Love that.
Yeah. And
so
not just
important.
pointing out, oh, you're so busy. You need to rest. Oh, that's so maddening. Like, I do. Help me. Okay, so tell me, Jones, well, I have one question for you.
Sure.
Well, I have two, but the first one is, what would this version of Jones tell the younger version of Jones?
Oh, that's an easy one. I almost had to think for a minute. I thought, no, you know what the answer to that is. What this version of Jones would tell the young Jones is build a better network. Build a better network. Build stronger relationships with people early on in your career for the sake of learning, not necessarily for the sake of getting a job or getting a keynote or getting a coaching client. Because early on, I just didn't do that. And of course, it was a lot harder then. We didn't have social media and some of the things that we have now. But I think I would have done lunch more. With people who I wanted to learn from. I would have had more phone conversations. I would have at meetings I've attended where I'm a speaker, I'd have played more golf. Just to hang out with people more. I would have done more of those informal, conversational kinds of things to learn and grow from other people. I think that would have accelerated my ability to be successful, not just necessarily in business, but in the impact that I want to have. So that's what I would say.
Right. It's interesting. You said, it's easier. I don't know exactly how you worded it, but basically it's easier now than it used to be. I think in some ways it used to actually be easier when we didn't have all that social media stuff, because you could actually create a personal connection with someone. And it was more expected. Yeah. Because now even if somebody calls me sometimes, I'm thinking, why is somebody calling me? Right? Like, weird. Why are they not sending a text? But it's just interesting. I mean, it is easier in a lot of ways, but when it comes to that personal connection, in some ways, it might be more challenging now.
Yeah. Well, it almost seems cheaper these days.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy. Whereas before, you had to make more of an attempt. It's like when you get a personal note these days versus somebody saying something to you in an email, you're just blown away that somebody would invest the time and energy to write you a note versus, and you're appreciative of the email, but still, it just lands there, or it does for me.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing. Hey, it's different to go and say, hey, let's get together coffee, or let's have a phone conversation than, an exchange on LinkedIn, which is important. But still, you're right. It doesn't have that personal feel, which is, I think, what so many of us are craving these days. And that's why, I think there's such opportunity for people to really work and build, genuine relationships with other people, because we have become so cold and calculated in our approaches to building our network.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And Jones, where can people find you?
First place, obviously, is jonesloflin.com. It's where my website is and those things. The book we talked the most about today is Focused as a Bee, and that's certainly they can go to focusedasabee.com to learn more about the book and the strategies there. It's available in all types of formats and places, and they can learn more about that there. I would invite your listeners to go to LinkedIn. I mentioned that earlier. Go to LinkedIn and connect with me on LinkedIn. Love connecting with people on LinkedIn to learn from them. I put out a lot of content on LinkedIn. I try to put out an idea almost every day about 8:30, and then usually something in the afternoon might be something a little bit different. But I'd love to connect with them on LinkedIn, learn more about what they're doing, and see if there's opportunities for me to help them or them to help me in our journeys.
Fantastic. And can you, so you talked a little bit about Juggling Elephants. Can you talk a little bit about, you have 200 books, is that right?
Sure.
Can you just share kind of a high-level overview of that so people can check that out too?
Yeah. Always Growing is the idea that you need to lead with a gardener's mindset. That too often we look at leadership like it's fixing things, fixing people, fixing problems. Whereas if you look at it from a gardener's mindset, then you look at what's possible. You start growing yourself, you start growing others, and you start growing your organization, your business, your team. Getting to it, I wrote a few years ago, is all about getting to the important things. It's more about prioritization. And so it's available in Kindle. And so it's just very much what it says. How do I get to it? I've got all these something else's in my day, but how do I get to the important things? So it's a book about prioritization. So those are some overviews of those two.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that's so exciting. And you have some free resources out there too, right?
Absolutely. For anyone who's listening today, if you want to go find out your level of focus, if you just go to jonesloflin.com/podcast, we've got a page dedicated for people who are listening to one of these podcasts these days where I'm talking a lot about the book. And you can take an assessment there that will tell you not only what your level of focus is, but it talks about the 6 areas that we look at in the book and what areas you need to work on and improve on. So it's a free resource. There's nothing coming after you after that, but it's just a way for you to assess your level of focus and then take the next step to improve.
You know what's funny is when you said that, I thought, oh, that's fantastic. And then there was, a tiny part of me that thought, ugh. I don't know if I want to find out the areas where I'm really unfocused, right? So what would you suggest to someone who's kind of like, it's kind of like looking at in some ways, it's kind of like when you see how much time you spend on your phone during the week, right? It's like you really do want to know, but I mean, you can't do anything about it unless you're aware of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where on the inside cover of Focused as a Bee, on the inside flap, the first thing it says is, what could you accomplish if you improved your ability to focus?
Oh, that's so good.
And so normally somebody who's pushing back, they go, okay, Jones, I'll take your stupid assessment. So,
right. And I'm not suggesting it's stupid. I mean, I want to go out
Jones's
there right
words.
away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, this was fabulous. Anything else that we need to cover that we didn't get to? I know that we could cover a lot more.
Well, absolutely. No, Sherry, I so appreciate the work that you do and the information that you give to your listeners. And so, no, I just think it's critical to remember that, how we use our time is a choice. And my goal is always to help people make the best choices with their time so they can thrive. And if something that I've offered today helps them to do that, then I'm excited for them to be able to begin taking that next step towards the life that they most want.
It's a choice whether it feels like it in the moment or not. It is ultimately a choice. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well said.
Thank you so much for being here today, Jones. This has been such a pleasure, and I just so appreciate this conversation, and I know that my listeners will too.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to our next opportunity to have a lively discussion. I'm sure neither one of us will be flummoxed for what to say.
I love it. And I'm going to have to incorporate that into my vocabulary immediately. Thanks, Jones. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Go out, get Jones' book, books, I should say, and check out the free resources. I know I'm going to, and I appreciate you being here. Thanks, everybody. See you next time. Thanks so much for listening to the Dash Mindset Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player, tell your friends, and leave us a review. Follow me on my social media platforms highlighted in the show notes, and get in touch with me at thedashmindset.com. Share the topics you'd like me to explore in future episodes. Thanks again for listening to the Dash Mindset Podcast. We'll see you next time. Design and differentiate your Dash your way and make today amazing.